Thank you. Good evening, everybody, or afternoon. Welcome to today's meeting of Derby City Council's Cabinet, Wednesday the 15th of February. It's 4 o'clock. We're here in the Council Chamber, and thank you for everybody that's in attendance. We have apologies from the Youth Mayor, from Omar Aslam, Councillor Smale, whose unfortunately family's had a bereavement, and Councillor Hassel, who has some commitments elsewhere. So that's item one. Any other apologies? Okay. In that case, late items. There are no actual late items, but there are addendums to item 20 and item 13, which I hope have been circulated and everybody's seen. So we'll deal with them as we come to them. Item 3, receipt of petitions. There are none. Identification of urgent items. There are none. Any declarations of interest, please? I take that as none. Minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of February. Can they be agreed? Yes, Councillor Webb, thank you. Recommendations from the Executive Scrutiny Board. The board looked at these papers last night and they've made recommendations on 3, which, if it's okay with you, Councillor Repton, we'll deal with in the customary fashion of dealing with them on each item, yeah? So which takes us to item 8, and the first key decision is determine school admission arrangements. Just going to do that. Oh, come out. Thank you.
Can you put your microphone on?
Okay, thanks very much, Karen. So in terms of this report, Chair, this is about determining school admissions arrangements for 24-25 for the Council's maintained schools, and this report is, of course, based on the School Admissions Code followed by all admissions authorities. The report outlines that consultation took place between October 2022 and November 2022. No comments, objections were received. The admissions process and criteria is all in accordance with the Admissions Code of Practice. There's only one change, Chair, which relates to Portway Infant School, where the governing body are reducing the admission limit from 90 to 60, which reflects current numbers and will still ensure sufficient places. So that change is sensible as part of their forward planning. In terms of the recommendation, Chair, it is to approve the proposed admission arrangements for council-controlled, managed, community and voluntary control schools. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, anything to add? Thank you. Execs really looked at this and resolved to note the report. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay. Well, if there's recommendations 2.1 to 2.2, can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 8 then is secondary school placement planning proposals. I suspect yourself again, Gamal.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to providing additional secondary school places where the Council has a legal duty to ensure there are sufficient secondary school places for pupils residing in the administrative boundary. This report relates to discussions with the Department for Education and their request to consider the schools increasing pupil numbers with temporary increases and bulge year group numbers across a number of schools. We've worked closely with schools on that over the last 12 months or so, and schools have submitted expressions of interest to expand schools with additional admission numbers. The table at 4.7 outlines the schools that submitted expressions of interest to create another 127 places, the largest scheme being at St Benedict's to create 180 places over 2 years, September 23 and 24. This report sets out a capital project that the school will then take forward following their feasibility, provide the extra accommodation for the 180 pupils, and using capital funding the council secured for additional secondary school places from the DFE. The recommendations in the report outline approval for that capital project and amendments to the capital programme. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yes, please, Chair. I would just like to say a massive thank you to our head teachers, the CEOs of some of the MATs, and to the governing bodies for actually taking part in the consultation and being really open with us about helping us out here in terms of those numbers. So again, I just wanted to express my thank you to them all for that. The relationship is a really good one, which has been built really effectively with Gamal and his team. So I'm really, really pleased with that ongoing relationship.
Thank you. Execs really looked at this and resolved to note the report. Gamal, just a quick one from me. I have seen at least one concern raised by a member of the public in relation to increased numbers at St Benedict's and the potential effect on parking and school travel arrangements, etc. Is that all fully considered and being mitigated?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That will be considered as part of updating of travel plans at the school. And also, Chair, the report outlines that the school have been successful with a proposal to either partially rebuild the school or major investment as part of the National School Rebuilding Programme. Hopefully that will give significant opportunity as well in terms of that scheme of modernisation and perhaps improvements to infrastructure, and hopefully that can also look at aspects of travel as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from Cabinet or anybody else? I'll take that as a no then. In that case, we've got recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed. Item 10 then is post-16 home to school transport travel assistance consultation outcome.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the consultation in relation to 16 to 19 home to school travel assistance. Public consultation has now taken place on the proposal, which is around, rather than the council arranging taxis and minibuses, that is replaced with a personal travel budget for eligible sixth form learners, as this aspect of travel is discretionary. The proposal consultation also set out improvements towards independent travel training to help young people become independent travellers as well. The 11-week consultation period took place from September 2022 to December 2022, and the documentation itself was drafted with the local area centre co-production group in order to help shape that document. Appendix 2 sets out the summary of responses received. 4.4 in the report outlines, importantly, that the council remains fully committed to providing discretionary travel assistance for eligible sixth form learners, whilst at the same time recognising that there are opportunities to align policies with other authorities and how discretionary travel is offered in different ways, including independent travel training. Equally importantly, the report outlines the challenges the council is facing and our medium-term financial plan well. 4.7 in the report outlines the proposal of how a personal budget would be provided, the level of that personal budget based on mileage distances, which is comparable to other authorities who have introduced similar schemes. The background context, of course, is a financial one in the sense of homeschool travel budget linked to the SEND reforms has increased significantly over the years, and it's currently a sort of expenditure around sort of 8.55 million. There are around 194 sixth form learners who travel in taxis at a cost of 1.4 million per year. 4.1 in the report sets out the 210 responses received on the organisations. The majority of the responses are not supportive of this change and focus on concerns that young people may experience challenges around travelling independently to school or college. The council recognises this, and therefore there are changes to the policy for exceptional circumstances when that might not be possible. For example, when there are particular medical needs or medical equipment and medical professionals that need to take young people to schools in those circumstances. The engagement with young people has been positive. Young people were very positive around the opportunities to have an enriched independent travel training offer and that sort of preparation for adulthood, and common themes are outlined there. In summary, Chair, the response from parents were raising concerns and indicated they do not support the proposed changes. Conversely, young people felt that independent travel training was a good opportunity, and the full documentation and responses received are attached in the documents attached, and the recommendations, Chair, are outlined from 2.1 to 2.3 in terms of that proposed change towards personal travel budgets from September 2023. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Camille. Executive Committee looked at this last night and made one recommendation for Cabinet to consider providing support for parents to apply for bursaries, grants and additional benefits for themselves or their post-16 send children. Councillor Repton, did you want to expand on that at all?
No, I think that's self-explanatory. I mean, the concerns were raised last night that it's regrettable that there'll be a number of children with certain disabilities which will, these proposals will make a barrier to them receiving the education that they and their families need for them. So, no, the recommendation as it stands, hopefully Cabinet will accept that. Thank you.
So, Councillor Williams, it's your portfolio. Did you want to respond or add to the report or respond to the
in terms of the recommendation, Chair, from scrutiny, we can definitely provide signposting to support parents to get the bursaries that are out there, so we can signpost them to be eligible for that. We wouldn't be doing that ourselves, but we can definitely help parents with the signposting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions in relation to the report itself? Yes, Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Chair. I think there are quite a number of concerns about the practicality of this. It says, well, to start with, I personally went to 3 of the consultation events that happened in this chamber, and I have to say they were very, very poorly attended by parents and carers. Most of the people in the room were council officers or other officers from other organisations. And I understand there was no consultation at certain schools outside of Derby, where the pupils travel from Derby as their home. And, you know, they had no opportunity, unlike some of the schools within the city who did get consultation events at their schools. Those people who will be most seriously affected because they have a longer distance to travel were not consulted. So I think that is a great shame, really. I think the key words here are eligible and discretionary. If we look at what it tells us that the law says, the local authority has the discretion to determine what transport and financial support is necessary to facilitate young people's attendance at education. The local authority must exercise its discretionary power reasonably, taking into account individual circumstances. Now, I've heard said that only sort of medical needs, you know, if people have got equipment, oxygen or that sort of thing, would be considered to be circumstances sufficient to warrant a taxi. Now, some people do not have physical disabilities. They are hidden disabilities. They may well be cognitive in the way that their brain works, and they are unable to, you know, follow a route and things like that, and would end up getting lost. What are you going to do about those people who've actually got in their particular section in their EHCPs, they've got the named school as one outside of Derby? You know, I don't think this has been very well thought through. people anyway that get taxis now have had to jump through loads of hoops to get them anyway. You don't get people getting taxis just because they want it. There's a solid reason for it already. And I fear that what will happen is that the lack of a taxi for some families, because of their financial circumstances as well, will mean that that child is no longer able to be in education from the ages of 16 to 19. You know, which is a great shame. We're talking about some of the most vulnerable children in the city. And, you know, their chances are being, quite frankly, ruined. You know, some of them well, a lot of them that have had disruption to their education and number, if not many, failed placements. A lot of them are behind their sort of age group, although they're not, had they had their needs met properly early on, they would be with their age group, their peers, in progress in education. So quite a lot of people do need that 16 to 19 to actually be able to get actually some qualifications, whereas most people would get them when they were 16. There's a lot of things that are in this policy that really, really concern me. And I'm not surprised that the parents were not supportive of the changes. And certainly I've seen examples of families, anonymised, where the cost of actually providing the transport is more than it would be if the council arranged taxis. At the moment, obviously, people often travel 2 or 3 in a taxi, which obviously is more financially better for the council. But I suppose afterwards, people are going to have to travel individually in a taxi because they won't, there will be no sort of way of actually putting people in touch with each other so that they can arrange joint transport with 2 or 3 other children. So you're actually going to get potentially more taxis, more pollution, more congestion. So on a number of grounds, I really think this needs to be looked at again. I understand.
So there's a number of points in there. I will ask Councillor Williams and Gamal if they can respond to some of those. But from my perspective, in terms of criticism of the consultation, it sort of answered your same question in that there were 3 events here and people to which people were invited and we can't drag them here kicking and screaming. But I guess, Gamal, the other schools that are involved where some of our young people are placed, they would have been notified of the consultation, been aware of the consultation and an opportunity to contribute if they wished. And as regards the individual's personal circumstances, even with hidden difficulties and cognitive difficulties, we're not saying, I think what we're saying is that each and every person's personal circumstances will be assessed and appropriate provision provided. So, Gamal, Yvonne, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, yeah, you're right in terms of communication went out to every school via the school circular, including independent providers as well, and also via local area SEND board partners and SEND co-production partners as well. An extra meeting was also scheduled if that helped people at different times, was a suggestion in order to get that engagement. And Chair, yes, each case will be assessed on a case-by-case basis in line with the new policy that's also attached to the.
Okay, any other questions, queries? No, in that case, we have recommendation 2.1 to 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed? In that case, we'll move on to item 11, the Derby Football Hub.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report which updates members on progress on the proposed Derby Football Hub. It was previously called Derby Park Life, in case members have recognise that name from the past. It's partnership with the Football Foundation, and they've changed that title for it, so it's confusing, but probably clearer now, being called a football hub, what it is. The project is to create state-of-the-art facilities for the city. It's based on a national model. There are 10 across the country. Some of those are in Liverpool and Sheffield, for example, so real hubs of football for those communities. This project is to be designed and built on the racecourse playing fields in the Derwent ward, and the hub itself will include 3 new artificial grass pitches and the refurbishment of the existing grass pitch there, a redevelopment of the existing building on site to include a cafe and really flexible community space for the whole community locally to be able to use for a variety of activity, an increase and improvement in the capacity and access to the car parking for the site, and the development of the wider site. So replacement of play equipment, putting in outdoor gym equipment, creating a circular path and enhancing ecological features of the space. So a really positive project overall, and creating more than just a hub for football, more of a community space across the board. The opportunity in terms of meeting our objectives as a city is clear partnership working, but also it meets our objectives around reducing inequality, improving health equality, addresses the shortfall we have for full-size artificial grass pitches in the city and the growing demand we have for football, reducing health inequality, and all of the objectives and around Move More strategy for physical activity and sport. The project is led by the Football Foundation, and it brings significant capital investment to the city. The operating model for running the facility would be based on the national model that is used by Football Foundation. That is the National Football Trust, so the legal owner of the site, and we would lease that to them as part of the arrangements and part of the report. They work with their charity, which is called Leisure United, to operate the site, and all surplus income that is produced from the site operation is reimbursed into the local city, so in our case, obviously into Derby, for community participation more broadly. It's a tried and tested model, and the operating model estimates a potential annual income of £27,000 of that surplus income into the city, which is obviously of benefit. It shows good partnership working, and we've worked alongside Derby County Community Trust and local football community organisations, plus the community in Derwent itself, around the need for their area. The project itself is £11.9 million project. 6 million of that is a grant from the Football Foundation. We also have been able to use Section 106 money of 624,000 and 150,000 of our existing artificial grass pitch replacement fund. So it leaves a balance for the council to find of £5,127,000. It is a fixed price design and build contract, which is obviously monitored by the council and the Football Foundation. And this report is really to ask members to agree to progress in the report, to grant the lease, and to add that capital fund onto the capital programme. I have to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. In summary then, a potentially fantastic facility with a major investment from the council, but also other partners and other funding available. And I suspect there may be members of the Cabinet who want to talk about the detail that they're aware of. Councillor Pearce?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, basically an excellent proposed facility not only for grassroots football, encouraging more children to participate in the sport, but also for the residents of Derwent, Chaddersden and the wider area for the community involvement with a cafe and community rooms that will be available to them. Something that's been missing from that area for many years. Together with a great partnership in the offing with Derbyshire County Cricket Club, who will be next door to this facility, basically to enhance their car parking facilities that they've got to use as overflow, in addition to the 200 car parking spaces that are being installed in the car park at the racecourse. This will obviously assist with the attendance on Saturdays and Sundays during the football season to get vehicles off the surrounding roads, which we are weekly clamoured about by the residents. We'll also give the cricket club additional parking when they put on their concerts or international matches, which increase their attendances during the summer months. Also, the non-profit side of the scheme, ensuring that all monies over and above operating costs go back into grassroots football and community projects throughout the city, makes an excellent scheme, one of which I cannot wait to see come to fruition. Also, the wider range of biodiversity projects, which is a significant part of the scheme, will transform the park from just a football facility into a biodiverse park for everyone, encouraging more walking and healthy outdoor activities once completed. I fully endorse the plans and report and would like to thank Duncan Cowie, Owen Swift and their teams for all their hard work produced to get us to this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. In amongst the details of the report, then there are measures that are aimed and will resolve some of those access and egress and parking issues. Are you satisfied that it's gone as far as it can?
More than satisfied, yeah. There's the 200 extra spaces. We do get regular weekly complaints from the residents about parking on the roads. They're doing a new ingress and egress from St Mark's Road. Those 200 extra spaces will fully complete that scheme. And obviously all the car parking at the moment, that's all going to be re-tarmacked, and we'll have it all white lines, so people aren't going to be parking over 2 spaces where there's 1. And as I say, with the partnership with the cricket club as well, which Owen's team have worked really hard with those as well. It's a joint operation there as well to get more parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Exec scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Are there any other comments, questions, thoughts? No, just a fantastic scheme that has been seen to work and work very well in other areas, and we intend to build on that and make it the community space that it needs to be. That helps with the city-wide as well. So a very much welcome report that has recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Can they be agreed? Thank you. Moving on then, we'll move to item 12, the Derby and Derbyshire Minerals Local Plan.
Okay. Just as exciting as the last report. So just to remind members, we are the Minerals Planning Authority for Derby City, and we have a duty to prepare a minerals plan as part of that responsibility. We work very closely with Derbyshire to do that, and we do it together. We have a joint advisory committee across the Derbyshire geographical area, so the county and the city, to work on minerals plan. Just to reinforce, there are no active or proposed sites for mineral extraction in the city. So we are really working as partnership, but we're not having a direct impact in our own boundary. The plan, before members tonight, has a period to go until 2038, so it's a long-term plan, and it has been through a range of consultation processes, as all plan documents do. The recent consultation had 3,500 responses. There were a number of views expressed during that consultation about the need to understand the issues around climate change, to address the issue of fracking, and also the use of hydrocarbons. All of those and other issues were taken into account in the review and were recommended to support the proposed changes based on that consultation. So climate impact assessment is being carried out to make sure those are understood and incorporated into the new revised plan. The next stage of the plan is, obviously, if the Council supports tonight the authority to publish the plan. That will be published by the Joint Advisory Committee, and there will be further consultation prior to submitting the plan to the Secretary of State for examination by a planning inspector. It is expected at this stage that examination may take place towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year, depending obviously on availability. Happy to take limited questions, Chair.
Thank you. So it's been quite a long process, this. It's quite a detailed process, and it's not finished in that. Whilst we're being asked to approve the plan, it then goes to submission to the Secretary of State, and then ultimately an inspector to approve the plan. So we're a long way down the road, but it's been a long process. And whilst it doesn't, on the face of it, directly affect the city greatly, we have had representations from members of the public in Derby, mainly around outside of the city issues, but they've been consulted on and shared and considered as part of this proposal and this plan. Yeah. Okay. I guess the Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Any other comments, questions? No. In that case, then We have items, recommendations 2.1 to 2.6. Can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Moving on then to item 13, which is the Community Managed Libraries Review, an update and an addendum which has been issued.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Just to reinforce that a late addendum to the report was circulated yesterday and was reviewed by Executive Scrutiny last night, and that was really to reflect latest discussions. So I'll come on to that. The background to the report, within the medium-term financial plan preparations over the last 6 months or so, has been recognised that this community managed library model that we have in place, one specific way of running community libraries, was financially unsustainable, probably impacted by some of the issues around COVID, but in the long term unsustainable. And the review work we carried out looking at usage and opening hours and all of those things also fed some useful information into that conclusion. As such, the end to the model was included in the budget proposals that went out to consultation earlier, late last year and early this year. At the same time, the Council was very clear that it was open to receiving different ideas from the community about how to maintain these really important local spaces, and a real commitment to seeking views to ways of keeping these libraries open and recognising their essential role. The budget consultation thus included an expression of ideas process to the whole city, asking for ideas and views about how we could be using these spaces differently. And that, obviously, the consultation ended on the 3rd of February, and that's when the expression of ideas process ended. Pleased to report to members, we have received really positive feedback from community groups across the board, and a very strong interest in being able to use these buildings in different ways, and also maintaining that library provision. Some of those have come from individual organisations about individual buildings, and some are for all buildings, all of the 10 community managed libraries we have now. I think it's a very positive sign. Given that high level of interest and the value of, we need to recognise the value of a formal process to evaluate those ideas. So this report therefore asks Cabinet to initiate a formal expression of interest process where we can include clear assessment criteria and go through some negotiations to evaluate the viability of those proposals and then to bring those forward. Any of those would, as noted in the report, be brought forward to Cabinet for approval. In the meantime, and to reflect the fact that early indications show that there's a strong possibility for all these libraries to remain in some form or other as important community spaces in their locality, it is recommended that after the 31st of March, all the libraries are able to continue running as in their current model, so using volunteers and existing opening hours, and that allows the time for the detailed negotiations to take place under the expression of interest process. We were considering different views about how to maintain that. The early indications were that to achieve this might be to extend the contract with the DHA, who are our current provider, but on further discussion both with DHA and within officers and in the addendum, it's recommended the libraries are brought back into the Council's ownership and the Council's operating model and run as explained as community libraries, but with volunteer model, but run for that period to maintain the maximum continuity of service and also the flexibility. As we progress the expression of interest process and negotiations, being able to then hand those libraries over to additional or alternative operating models will be possible to do in a more easy way from the Council itself, having that control. In terms of the implications for Cabinet, it's simply to recognise that there will be, that the DHA will continue to run those libraries until the end of March. There'll then be a phased handover in April of those libraries to maintain continuity of service, and then the Council will run those services for a period of time, 6 to 12 months, based on the needs for the expression of interest to be fully negotiated and worked through. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. So, Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night, and their recommendation was that Cabinet urgently ends this worrying uncertainty and spell out very clearly which libraries could be realistically stay open and how this will be achieved. Martin, I hear the recommendation. I'm not sure where the uncertainty is, because We've been absolutely clear that DHA's involvement would end, which it has. The libraries have been brought back in-house, and the recommendations we've got today and the purpose of the report is to give us the time, the money and the opportunity to look at all the options for these 10 facilities, and as soon as each one or every one of those is decided, of course, we will make public how it's going to be achieved and what will be happening there. So perhaps, I don't know if you want to explain any.
Yeah, if I could help you, Chair, in terms of the uncertainty. I mean, I did have to say last night that one could smell the burning rubber hanging over the city following the screeching U-turn by this administration, following letters going out from who knows who in the city. Because I asked the question for the cabinet men, who sent these letters out, and what was the purpose of them? And following the letters going out, the letters actually spelt out quite clearly a closure timetable. So I asked last night. No, you asked me, Chair, about what the uncertainty was. I'm trying to explain.
Come to order, please.
I'm trying to explain what the uncertainty is.
Come to order and let the Chair say what he wants to say, please. Thank you. Right. Having listened to the start of your political party broadcast on
No, you asked me to explain. I'm trying to explain, but you've stopped me explaining. Where's the openness and transparency?
Having listened to the opening of your party political broadcast on the subject...
Well, perhaps you listen to all of it, you'd understand.
Is there really any need for this attitude?
Well, why do you want to close down debate about it?
I don't want to... I want to confine debate...
I've had 30 seconds to speak. You asked me where the uncertainty was. I tried to explain it. After 30 seconds of trying to explain it, you just shut me down.
Councillor Repton, can I remind you of the role of the chair? The chair is for the chair to govern the running of this meeting. When the chair asks you to stop speaking while he speaks to you, it's polite for you to allow him to finish. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Martin, what I want to do is for you to focus on the papers in front of you and the rationale for the recommendations that come to Cabinet. Bear in mind, this is a Cabinet meeting. I've read out your recommendation. What I want you to try and do is focus on what it is this report is asking us to agree, and that is to formally agree to start in a process of formal expressions of interest for all of these premises.
Can I attempt to explain again and be given more than 30 seconds, Chair? Is that democratically allowed in the North Korean City Council of Derby? I've had 30 seconds. Okay, that was a joke. Okay, that was a joke. You asked me about uncertainty, so I'll have. Can I have another 30 seconds?
Councillor Repton, if you can't keep your comments to a reasonable and projective and useful level, then I'm going to move on. This is a Cabinet meeting. We've got 23 items to get. Can I explain then the uncertainty? Okay, is there anybody else in Cabinet want to make a comment?
Am I allowed to explain the uncertainty and why people are concerned in the city about letters that have gone out to people saying that a number of libraries will close? Am I allowed to explain? No, obviously not. Okay. Well, there's no point in me being here, isn't there? You won't listen to the recommendations. You won't let us explain. You won't explain to the people of Derby why these letters went out. So what's the point in this democracy, this so-called democracy? It's outrageous. The people of Derby will remember this.
So maybe we can get back to some constructive conversation on the subject. Did you want to come in at this point, Councillor Eyre, or do you want to listen to any other?
If there's any other contributions from opposition leaders, but I'm happy to follow that. I've got my speech is quite long, so if anyone wants to come in before.
Yeah, Councillor Skelton.
Right, yes. This is indeed a worrying time for many people. Obviously, the budget was issued for consultation on the 21st of December, and unfortunately, this paper was not issued at the same time. A great mistake, I think.
Can I just say the reason for that was it was part of the budget consultation and not in relation to these measures.
But the cuts were contained within the budget. and that's what obviously alarmed a lot of people. And certainly the
Actually, what alarmed a lot of people was an unfounded schedule of closures that was unagreed and not.
Yeah, I'm talking about over
and
Christmas time and New Year.
Sorry to interrupt you. Carry on.
People were certainly contacting us over the holiday period, and particularly people who found that going to the local library regularly was perhaps the only trip out they had during the week. And they'd meet other people there, talk, read, etc. And I think, you know, people don't quite realise how important libraries are. And it's not just for older people, for younger people, for people who don't have and can't afford, more precisely, can't afford internet access at home. There is already a digital divide in our society. And as more and more government departments go on to digital by default, i.e. you've got to apply for benefits online and all the other sorts of things, it becomes more and more difficult for people. And therefore I believe it is very important that you know, people are provided with internet access that they can access for free. And at the moment, libraries do that service.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt you again, but can I just reassure you that we as a cabinet and as an administration absolutely understand and value the services that these premises that can provide, and that's why through this report and through the budget we made provision for them to be brought back in-house, for the options to be considered, and wherever is possible and practical to make better use of them, but continue with the services that they provide.
Yeah, and that is very good to hear that, and it would have been lovely to hear that on the 21st of December. It would have saved a lot of people an awful lot of heartache and worry, and you know, a lot of communities where they had to hurriedly try and find some sort of way forward by putting in a bid, an expression of interest bid, and you know, it could have been done a lot better. And organised a lot better with, you know, a lot less stress for people in communities.
Sorry again, Ruth, but just an observation on that. People's perceptions and fears and things aren't helped by certain scaremongering and misinformation either. So it might be that things could have been done better, but circumstances have come together whereby other people's contributions have not helped in relation to getting a clear message over. But I hope this
I do accept that it was
message.
Other people had put in their two penneth unhelpfully, but it is good to see that that there has been, you know, a good response to the process of asking for expressions of interest. And I hope that, as was said previously, that the different organisations within each that are interested in each particular library are put in touch with each other at an early stage so that they can talk with each other and hopefully bring forward something that's, you know, even better value.
And as Rachel said, we're actually enthused by the number of organisations and groups that have come forward, expressed an interest, numerous in relation to, well, some in relation to every different facility, but in some cases many, and we can assure you we'll work with all those to find the best resolution for what the community want in those spaces, and we're giving ourselves the time, the opportunity and the funding to do so.
Yeah, and I hope also that we as a council will reflect on the experience of community managed libraries in the way that we actually did it in 2017, and make some changes if that is a sensible way forward.
I agree, Ruth. And actually, reflecting back to 2017, we inherited a position that wasn't no way clear, was no way organised, and with the best intent in the world, DHA have attempted to run these facilities but weren't able to achieve all the outcomes that they reported and promised in the first place, and as a consequence, at the end of their grant arrangement period, it's only right to look at alternative ways of doing it, but without any closures, without any schedules of closures or anything like that. So we're on the right track now, and I'm sure the outcome will be better. Thank you for your contribution. Councillor Shanker, did you want to add to Councillor Repton's contribution? Then we'll revert to Councillor Eyre. Councillor Graves.
Thank you very much. No doubt Councillor Shanker wants to get the last word in if he can. What I'd like to say, first of all, is I find that it's very sad, Mr. Chairman, that you've used this meeting to shut down debate and contributions from the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny and an opposition member. I don't think it does this council any good where you stop people speaking about issues. You talk about it being a party political broadcast, but if you look at the people in this room, I don't think there's many people that you're going to persuade to vote in any other particular way than they already vote. So I don't understand your reasoning why you would want to do that. However, on this report, what I will say is that Councillor Repton was wrong. It isn't a U-turn. What this report does is it kicks it into the next council period. And so therefore you are obviously looking to the future and realising that you are not going to be in the position you are today, and you want somebody else to make these decisions for you, and that's exactly what this report looks like. And I think sometimes if you want to close libraries, then you ought to say so. If you want somebody else to do it, you ought to say so, because you're not offering them really any help at all. And I'll be very, very surprised if you find anybody that wants to take these on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your contribution, Councillor Graves. I'll answer your first question, or your first point first. And the reason that, as you put it, Councillor Repton, had to be shut down was because this is a cabinet meeting. I'm more than happy to take contributions from anybody, but what I'm not prepared to do is to listen to political rants that don't address the subject under discussion. That's why he was not allowed to go any further. In relation to you're entitled to your beliefs about the intentions of this report, but I'm sure Councillor Eyre is about to tell us that we have no intention of closing these facilities. We've had a lot of very proactive interest, and we would do what we need to do in terms of establishing a proper business case and a proper expression of interest, and wherever it is possible, then we will do and get the best outcome for these facilities. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to speak on the report and the addendum that's come before us today to finally put to bed the utter rubbish that has been spouted in various locations about closure intentions or closure desires that absolutely never existed. My contribution is not going to be brief. It's going to be a long contribution, but I hope that it provides us a basis for a very clear statement of what our intention is, how we got to where we are, and what this report does. I'll go slowly. My Italian heritage has either blessed or cursed me with a fast-speaking tone, so if I'm going too quickly for anybody, just let me know and I will slow down. I want to start by reading out recommendation 2.3 in full, for the benefit of anyone who either hasn't read the report or any members of the public who may be watching live or watching later. So recommendation 2.3. Subject to the budget being approved by full council on the 27th of February 2023, to approve CMLs reverting to the council to allow the continued provision of community library services from the buildings from the 31st of March 2023 in accordance with the handover schedule. To note that this arrangement will remain in place until the outcomes of the formal expressions of interest process are known and proposals are formulated from the responses to determine the next steps of the project and the implementation of them. The operation of the services by the Council intends to include the use of volunteers in the interim period, so that they can continue to be involved in supporting the delivery of these valuable services. Continued provision of library services from the 31st of March 2023. Operation of the services via volunteers, valuable services. This report and the addendum are about continued provision of libraries, keeping libraries open, not closing libraries. The proposals in this report, successfully delivered after the budget, will keep libraries open following the 1st of April and will not see them close on the 31st of March. Keeping libraries open being what we as a Conservative administration always wanted and always stated was our intention. But before I talk more on the report and the addendum before us, I want to discuss how we arrived where we are, and then I'll add to what Rachel has already said about what this report and addendum does. So in July 2022, we had received the letter from Direct Help and Advice, the current operators of the libraries, regarding their withdrawal from service provision, and we commenced the review that was led by Community Action Derby. I said in Cabinet in July, and it was widely reported in the press and the media, that this council had no intention to close libraries. But I said that libraries would have to change. I talked about when I was younger and I went to libraries and they were full of videos and cassettes. And they changed to DVDs, there's been the addition of computers, and then more recently audiobooks. But it was clear that more change was going to be needed and more ways of delivery were also going to be needed. The change needed is because ultimately we have some libraries that work very well and attract thousands of visitors per quarter. Some fail to attract more than 500 per quarter. We have some that are able to be open 4 days a week and more if they can. We have some that are trying to maintain the 8 hours a week they're on now. We have a one-size-fits-all model that only fits some. And it's become unsustainable in the current climate. Now, I want to put on record my sincere thanks to Carla and DHA for their management and overseeing of the libraries over the last 5 years. The model created by the previous administration has flaws, especially around GDPR and other elements, and their 5-year tenure was impacted by COVID-19 drastically. But they've been very contactable and open with me. We've had many discussions. They've been cooperative with officers. I can see their passion, and as you mentioned, Chair, they've endeavoured to do what they could with the service within the model that's there. And I'm appreciative, and I thank them for what they've done. In November, a report came back to this Cabinet with options, either to close the libraries from the 1st of December or to keep the libraries open. I repeated again at that November meeting that this Conservative Cabinet had no intention to close libraries, and this Conservative Cabinet voted to keep libraries open for another 4 months with a sizable grant to DHA. We made the right decision, but new models and changes were still needed. Officers had had a number of positive discussions with DHA, but it was clear that the DHA CML model, which is just one model of operating libraries, there are lots of different models. I know, Councillor Webb, I can't remember if you were north or south, but you saw a different model of community libraries opening. I was in Cornwall recently. They have different models for libraries there. But it became clear the existing model would close and end. As such, the changes to what libraries are was still needed, new models of delivery would still be needed, and now new operators or operator would also be needed. Subsequently came the budget consultation, which commenced in December, which included withdrawal of funding from and closure of the DHA CML service model. As Rachel quite rightly highlighted last night, despite incorrect assertions from various angles, money was always left in the budget for CMLs. Now, apologies to put you on the spot, Simon, but I wondered if you could confirm the amounts that were there for CMLs.
Do you want me to contribute there, Chair? So the addendum sets it out quite clearly. There was 129,000 in the base budget. There was a further 100,000 added in the budget in December. And at that point, we were still trying to define the costs of the operation of the libraries. That wasn't information from DHA. and the February budget report talked about a further 117,000 being put in, and then there was just over 60,000 added. So in the addendum, the financial envelope to operate 10 libraries in the budget is funded and is detailed where those approvals and budgets were provided. Hopefully that gives explanation to all members, Councillor.
Thank you, Simon, and my apologies for putting you on the spot on that one. But that makes clear then that significant amounts of money were in that budget and that budget consultation that went out to the public. Now, if there was any intention to close libraries, why would that money be there? It was there because we were always looking to find the ways forward, because the intention to close libraries was not there. Several specific budget lines relating to libraries also talked about enabling wider community opportunities, locality working, and asset efficiencies. Wider community opportunities being the ability for volunteers, CICs and other groups to take a larger role in running their libraries, exactly what this is about now. Locality working being the new system of neighbourhood working which all councillors should be familiar and aware of. And asset efficiencies being the reality that some libraries are not located in the most efficient places. One of our libraries, for example, I don't believe even has a sign to say library. So that's what we're on about there. Sadly, it seems some members of council opposition groups disregarded these lines, disregarded the facts as they've just been stated, and disregarded everything I had said prior to the budget in full council, in cabinet, and in the press and the media, and fabricated an intentional complete closure proposal narrative about an intention this Conservative cabinet not only never had, but which was nothing alike the repeatedly stated intention I had made in cabinet, in council, and in the press. In my view, this was disingenuous and wrong. In January, we launched the expression of ideas process, a soft market test, which I'll admit I did inadvertently refer to as an expression of interest process. It's an informal expression of interest process, but it's not the formal process. I accept that. They're very alike, and those sending in their ideas have in essence informally sent in their interest, but there's a formal process we must go through. Lots of groups have got in contact with us through that ideas process. They put forward their suggestions and their ideas, and these have ranged from running a non-book related session in one library to taking over multiple libraries, or indeed all libraries, alongside volunteers. The viability of these proposals, of course, still need to be evaluated, as will occur in the formal expression of interest process. I firmly believe in being a proactive cabinet member, and I felt, as a cabinet member, it was my responsibility to ensure every councillor was aware of this expression of ideas procedure, that no one missed out and found it too late. So I emailed that procedure and a link to the article to every councillor in this council. I was subsequently contacted by every Conservative councillor with a CML in their ward and all 3 independent councillors on this council, with various messages ranging from invitations to visit their library and meet their volunteers, invitations to meet volunteers at other locations, invitations to meet with councillors and officers, invitations to meet with councillors one-on-one, requests for more information or to be provided with suggestions. And I want to thank all those councillors for showing the initiative and the community championing spirit to do so. I'd also like to thank Councillor West, who thanked me for the email I'd sent out. I do, however, want to put on record my sincere and severe disappointment in other members of this council. One councillor suggested I sounded angry about this at the meeting yesterday, and I suppose I am. I'm angry at the thought that so many residents have put their faith in councillors who didn't advocate for their area to a cabinet member. Because aside from the thanking email from Councillor West, not a single other Labour, Liberal Democrat or Reform Party councillor emailed me back to that email to invite me to their library, suggest an idea or proposal directly to me, ask me to meet with interested parties, ask me to meet with them and officers, or request that I meet with them to discuss a library in their ward or anywhere else in the city. Only Conservative and independent members chose to do this. Conservative cabinet members have openly declared their open door policies. You all have access to my email address and a phone number to reach me on, which were on that email. Any councillor who didn't ask to meet me chose not to meet me. This is even more troubling to me if any Labour, Lib Dem or Reform councillor had a severely mistaken but genuine belief of a closure. Despite everything that was said to the contrary, if you ignored all of that, that means that none of the councillors wanted to meet the Cabinet member to lobby or advocate for their residents. It's the first thing I would have done as an opposition member, and I could have told you how wrong you would have been. So subsequently to the expression of ideas process, at which, as I say, we've had a fantastic response, officers spoke to DHA about continuation for another few months. But it became clear that a March-April severance was the right thing to do on all parts concerned. Hence the addendum to the report here today. I must add that the relationship between Derby City Council and DHA, which when I checked yesterday morning was positive with mutual understanding and respect, it was not aided by whoever chose to misrepresent an unagreed proposed handover schedule as a council closure schedule. Irrespective of the fact, it was not a document created by this council, it was not a document that had been agreed to by this council, it was not a document on council-headed paper, and it included the names of DHA employees by first name. I want to be clear, and I want to be clear. That document was not created by or agreed to by Derby City Council. I have double and triple checked with officers, and I'm assured no closure schedule has ever been agreed to by this council. So with all that process behind us, we have the report and addendum before us today. The report and addendum provides us with a way to bring the libraries back in-house and keep them open after the 31st of March, delivered by the volunteers who deliver them now, with the council overseeing this. The necessary budget is provided to do this, the budget, of course, to be agreed at the end of the month. The report also provides the next step of the expression of interest procedure, so we can find viable long-term solutions and viable long-term deliverers to take these libraries on as soon as possible. The expression of interest process is expected to take 4 to 6 months, and we already have dozens of interested parties, Councillor Graves, many encouraged by Conservative councillors. But of course, the process will be open to everyone, with all interested parties contacted. If any of the expressions of ideas that have come in are from Labour or Lib Dem or Reform councillors, I'm grateful you took my advice in that email and circulated it amongst your networks. Once successful parties have made it through the EOI process, the intention is for libraries to be transferred over to them at the earliest opportunity, at which stage positive discussions about funding from the council can be taken, and I look forward to those. Over the next few weeks, we will, and I will, work with existing volunteers under DHA to bring them in with the council to continue to deliver the service after the 31st of March, preventing closure from the 31st of March and continuing the delivery as it is now. I've been asked about the creation of a new model which came up yesterday. What we have created, which is different from the existing model, is the opportunity for local groups, CICs, organisations and volunteers to champion their libraries and provide additional services alongside them. Alongside library provision, this could be youth provision, old person support, health and welfare, legal advice, educational assistance and more. It's not for me as the Cabinet member or for anyone else to tell community and voluntary sectors to pick individual libraries and go inside them. What we have done is made it is go out to these organisations, get the ideas from them, and exactly as Councillor Skelton mentioned, bring the organisations together to look at what can be delivered in a co-locating way. Chaddesden Conservative councillors have exemplified this brilliantly. They invited me to their library to meet with volunteers. They brought together volunteers, an active local group, and a wider city organisation to talk together about future provision, about finances, about extra services, and about opening hours. I wish councillors of other parties had been anything like as proactive as that. Through the handovers to new groups with new service provision comes the co-location and community library community hub model with the changes I spoke about in July. There is no, and has never been, this blanket closure and no replacement proposal that has been spoke of. To talk about quacking U-turns, as one email exchange did, is not accurate. And we were very clear about our intentions in July, in November, in December, and in January. And I hope I've been very clear now, because I'm sure no one wants me to repeat the whole speech again. I'm incredibly pleased to see this report before us. It's what I spoke about at previous meetings. It's exactly what I said I wanted to see. It's always been the intention of this council. I'm grateful to see it before us today. It has my full support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I think your passion rather than anger has come through with that speech, and hopefully it's made clear for everybody, for the public, for other party group leaders and for the media that we're perfectly clear on this. There is no, has never, and will not be a plan to close all of these facilities. We have brought the facilities back into, or we will bring the facilities back into the auspices of the library service whilst we look at the options and agree with the communities what's best for these spaces, and we'll do that at pace. So just to confirm, for the avoidance of doubt, we have been perfectly clear with officers that these libraries won't close until this process has been carried out or any other options are exhausted. We're perfectly clear that there will be a seamless transition between the facility that's currently exists and what it moves into. There will be no short-term closures or whatever. It's vital that these facilities remain open and the volunteers have a seamless commitment from one way of doing it to another. And the final thing is, of course, that we've absolutely impressed on officer the urgency of this. Councillor Ayres talked about the timescales. We've made provision for a year, the funding for a year for this, so that there's no issues around funding in the timescales. But we've instructed officers to do this transition and do this process, ideally within 6 months, and that's what we've set. So, with that in mind, if there's no there can be no ambiguity of that. You've had it explained exactly what Councillor Ayres' view on this, but you've, as somebody said, you've managed to arrange the last word on this, Councillor Shank.
Yeah, I think it was Mystic Meg over there who said somebody different may be in control of the council, but maybe he knows something that we don't. I thought this would be a relatively simple debate when you first started the discussions, Chair, because I think there was an admission that, and I don't expect you to call it a U-turn, I don't expect you to admit kicking it into the long grass, that's for outside of here, but you did indicate that this was a consideration following the budget consultation, which absolutely you have the prerogative to do. I just think, having heard Councillor Ayres' speech, as he put it, which referenced politics and political parties a lot more than Councillor Repton, but you didn't feel obliged to intervene and ask Councillor Ayres to stop. Somebody in this chamber needs to take a truth tablet. Let me explain why. First, let's just go back to some of the process, and Councillor Ayres explained what happened since July last year, but let's go to before July last year. The first letter, I believe, from DHA to the council wanting to terminate the delivery and the provision of community managed libraries was back in November 21, when there was a decision taken. I'm told it wasn't a key decision, although it affected more than 2 wards. A decision was taken back in November 21 without coming to Cabinet, that there'd be £26,000 per month afforded to DHA to continue libraries until February 22. And then in February 22, again, there was a further decision taken, not coming to Cabinet, to say, let's extend this for a bit longer. Interestingly, it was July 22 when this first came to Cabinet, after the May elections of last year. So one's got to ask, why has it taken so long to get this debate going and action taken if, like Councillor Ayres has just said, It was always stated that they were planning to close any community libraries, and it was always their intention to keep all community libraries open. We know what Simon Riley has just said about the finances available in the addendum and the description of those finances. And there is now £415,000 available to keep libraries open for at least a year. And I welcome that. I'm not going to criticise anybody for that. I think they're important resources. And we welcome that. But that has been 2 additional sums of money. £67,000 in this addendum, £117,000 in the budget report dated February. But let's not also forget, and we were briefed on this, and I'm sure you've been briefed on this, Chair, if I know, you must know, £100,000 of the money that's being used now to keep libraries open was actually allocated to board 9 of the 10 libraries up. That's where that money's come from. It's not money to keep libraries open. Senior officers of this council have told me a provision had been made in the budget papers, and Derby Homes have apparently quoted for the work as well, to board libraries up. So, again, Councillor Eyre, great spin on things, but if you want to state facts and the truth, then let's stick to it wholly. Let me finish if you don't mind. I'm not going to talk over you, Councillor Poulter. I'll stop talking. I'm not going to talk over you. You managed to let other councillors speak without interrupting those. Page 17 of the December 21st Cabinet Report. 4.6.11, third bullet point. Libraries, removal of council subsidy from community managed libraries amounting to the closure from the 1st of April 2023. Community managed libraries amounting to the closure from the 1st of April 2023. You can keep butting in if you want, Chris. I'll stop as soon as you want me to stop. If you, I'm okay constructing my own argument. Councillor Barker resorts to social media. There is nothing in the budget document about closing community managed libraries. The only reference is the fact DHA are now on a short-term contract whilst we find an alternative system using volunteers, as did DHA. And then he goes on to say they are only closing libraries if we cannot find volunteers. So that suggests to me libraries, both in the December report and your own thinking was they were going to close. And if you've changed your mind on that, that's absolutely fine. You're entitled to do that, and that's what consultation should be about. But just be honest and admit to it. Your own statement, Councillor Poulter, I had to find one from you. Although we are talking about the end of the community managed library project, we are looking to keep the more popular ones open and hope that local communities will join us in doing that in places like Spondon and Alistry. That doesn't say to me we've got no intention of closing any library. It absolutely does, as far as I'm concerned. Again, if you want to keep butting in, Councillor Poulter, you're the chair. I'm sure the monitoring officer will remind me that you're the chair, and you can do whatever you like in this chamber. But it's entirely up to you. I'll stop now. You want me to stop now? I'm happy to stop now. It's absolutely up to you. If you don't want to hear what I've got to say, it's your call. You stop me whenever you're ready. I'm not going to speak over you. I've told you that many times. You want me to stop speaking, you don't like what I'm saying, it's up to you to stop me, and I'll stop immediately. I've still got a few things to say. Okay, thank you. So why can't you just admit that you've got this wrong, totally wrong? In December, you issued a report, it goes out in officers' names, but it's the Cabinet report. And now to completely say there wasn't any intention of closing any libraries is just totally misleading. You espouse to be the administration of openness and transparency. And again, this just proves you're anything but. So just be honest. Just be honest with people. You propose to close the community managed libraries. The response you've had out there from the public, from opposition parties, irrespective if they invited Councillor Eyre personally to attend a library. And I note he's changed expression of interest to expression of ideas. That's a new one, but hey, must have taken some thinking, that one. So it's just absolutely staggering that you can't still, at this stage, tell the truth, admit you got it wrong, because you're allowed to do that. Admit you got it wrong. You've put money back in for a year to keep community managed libraries open, and now let's constructively, everybody, all councillors, all 51 councillors, along with community and voluntary groups, along with a number of business leaders who have approached me, who are all wanting to help in keeping our libraries open. Let's move forward in a constructive manner, but let's not just try rewriting, let alone history, just the last 3 or 4 weeks. I was half expecting another addendum to be thrown at us as we were walking from the offices into the chamber this evening. You've changed your mind so many times on this. Just admit it was wrong. Let's work together and make sure we're all collectively doing whatever we can to keep all of Derby's libraries open. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome the offer to cooperate, but I'm afraid your misconception and misinterpretation of what's gone off is equally shocking, and the way that your group has reacted to it has not been helpful. Councillor Skelton.
Just very quickly, Chair, I was somewhat disappointed at Councillor Eyre's swipe at Liberal Democrat councillors. If he'd bothered to find out, we actually have done a great deal for particularly Blaegreaves Library. I personally have spoken with the Chief Executive, also with the Library Services Manager. We have organised a suburb-wide petition, well, in fact, city-wide, and we have also formed a steering group for Blaegreaves Library. If Councillor Eyre, it's a great pity he actually didn't bother to find that out. We didn't anticipate or didn't expect that we had to tell him what we were doing before we could do it or ask for his permission. But we just got on with it because we're experienced councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, if you want to come back on that, on the Blaegreaves side of things, and your expectations in the way forward briefly, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, of course, Chair. I'm very pleased to hear that's what's going on. I said that you had an opportunity to come and meet with me. It's something you didn't take up. It's something that was available to any councillor to send an email and ask to have a conversation with the cabinet member. It wasn't done. I'm great. I sent an email out. Asking councillors essentially to do exactly that. I'm grateful to hear you followed my advice and did so. To come back on Councillor Shanker's points very briefly, I'm just going to say, Chair, community managed libraries is a model. We're changing the model. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, so we've got some recommendations, and they are contained in the addendum, finalised in the addendum now, 2.1 to 2.7. Oh, the amendments, the recommendations are 2.1 to 2.7, and there are amendments in the addendum. So, in line with the amendments, 2.1 to 2.7, can they be agreed? Super. Thank you very much. In that case, we'll move on to item 14, which is the South Derby Growth Zone. David, you've waited very patiently for your item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This report relates to a project that I think most people here will be familiar with, which is the proposed new link road from the A50, which will facilitate the South Derby Growth Zone as a whole, but of course that includes within Derby the Infinity Park development, the further phases of Infinity Park. There was a previous Cabinet report back in April of last year where we first started to seek approval in relation to the collaboration agreements, which will be both between the private and public sector and also between the local authorities. There's two separate collaboration agreements. The actual economic benefits of the Link Road, etc., are all set out in the report, so I won't dwell on those too much. But what I will focus on is just some of the key headlines. So first of all, the key timelines in terms of this is obviously a contract that is being led by Derbyshire County Council. They were the applicant and and have been awarded the just under £50 million worth of Levelling Up Fund from the first round of Levelling Up Fund, which was announced in 2021. And the key timelines at the moment are a full business case, which will be completed by late this year, this calendar year. And April this year is when Derbyshire are hoping to formally appoint the contractor, with an intended start on site early next year, 2024. Completion, at the moment, there's an aim for March 2025, but I think we all recognise, and I think in the report it recognises that we may have to extend that for another year to March 2026. In terms of the recommendations, they relate to three particular key areas. The first one is the collaboration agreements themselves, and within that are, I suppose, the really key issues are how we share risk with the County Council and with the other private sector partners. In terms of the pre-construction costs, any risk of clawback we believe is very, very low, because DFT tends not to do that, even on pre-construction funding. But the way the collaboration agreements are set out is there is currently on paper a 50-50 split of carrying that risk between the County Council and the City Council, with those pre-construction costs at 4.7 million. But as I say, we believe the risk of any clawback on that is very, very low. And then the other element of cost risk is in relation to any cost overruns for the actual construction. And this is capped at 10% beyond the total project cost, which is currently 56 million. And even within the 56 million, there is a £14 million worth of contingencies. So there's lots of kind of, if you like, insurance in place around the risks here. But in terms of the cost overrun risk, that is split 50-50 between public and private sector. And then the public sector element of that is split again 50-50 between county and city. So of the £5.6 million limit on cost overruns, the exposure for the City Council is 1/4 of that. So somewhere around the 1.4 million is the on paper risk that the City Council is carrying. The other recommendation relates to the CPO powers and highway powers, which we will be delegating to the County Council just for the parts of the scheme which fall within the city boundaries. And then the third recommendation there is the last recommendation, 2.4, relates to the Homes England grant, the capacity funding, £800,000, of which £700,000 is proposed to be transferred to the County Council, and that will enable them to progress the business case development, costs associated with the CPO, design development, site investigation and legal fees. So there's a whole kind of menu there of costs which the County Council will be carrying, and we're using a big slug of that Homes England grant to support those costs. And the final point maybe to make at a headline level is I think the significance of this as a piece of enabling infrastructure has probably become even more significant recently, because we can't say a lot about it, but there is a lot of growth potential now in Infinity Park, particularly in relation to one key economic sector in the city. And this link road, of course, will facilitate the phase 2 of Infinity Park, for which we'll be seeking enterprise zone status, particularly when the combined authority comes on stream. So actually the business case for this infrastructure is probably strengthened, I would say, even since the Luft bid was originally made by the County Council. So, but I'll probably leave it at that and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Martin, where did I get that? David. Who's Martin? Anybody know Martin? Oh, it's Martin. David, I think this represents a fantastic opportunity for Southern Derby and South Derbyshire. It's potentially the key to massive economic growth in that area, and 2,600 houses, I think. I recently attended a meeting of local authorities across the length of the A50 and the A500 corridor from Nottingham to Crewe, in which it was recognised that the business and the manufacturing and the industry and private sector interest either side of this road for its entire length is massive and should be focused to a government point of view and a combined authority view, in that, as I say, they're extremely jealous that we've already got the funding through our LUF bid for the new junction that will open this aspect. But from everything from easy access to Smart Park to easy access to Infinity Park and nuclear MRC and all the other things that could potentially come along there, including the opening of the 200-strong academy, nuclear academy that Rolls-Royce and the university and ourselves in partnership are doing. Couple that with the Freeport, the development zones, Toyota, Rolls-Royce, Alstom, the people involved in this meeting who intend, and we will drive this A50, A500 corridor economic growth option, are extremely jealous of the position that we in Derby are in. So whilst it's not without some risk, and there are always risk in major projects like this, it's something that in my view, we couldn't not do for the economic benefit of the Derby and the Derby area as a whole. So I welcome this report, and I'm open to any other further comments or questions in relation to it. Yes, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the map contained within the report, obviously, more than 2,000 new houses is going to create probably another, 4,000 vehicles, cars on the road, which of course will have an impact on the neighbouring areas, such as Blaegreaves, Sinfin and Littleover, as well as Chellaston. What money is being set aside for mitigation in the existing suburbs?
It's not addressed in this report, Ruth, obviously, but any development within this development zone would be subject to planning, and in planning there would be the normal conditions and requirements in terms of health, infrastructure and everything else that goes along with it. So there'd be every opportunity to consider any infrastructure issues or strategic transport issues that are required. David, anything to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's obviously a key point here. There's trade-off in all of this. I guess the thing I would say is, first of all, just to build on what the Chair has just indicated, is part of the funding associated with the project will be mitigation measures associated with the development of the scheme itself, things like junction improvements and that type of thing to aid traffic flow. The other thing as well, which is more of a macro point, don't want to get to a huge philosophical debate about this, but it is one of the challenges for Derby is the fact that our housing offer, if you like, probably means that people are currently travelling more into the city than we'd otherwise want them to, and actually having more homes closer to where the economic activity is will probably have, improve in some ways some of the traffic flow. So I think there is obviously lots of modelling takes place around this, but in actual fact, you can imagine a sizable proportion of the people that will live here will be accessing those key employers that are in this part of the city. So one hopes that there's some positives around travel behaviours, if you like. But absolutely, if you like, the hard-nosed mitigation measures will always be part of this. And also National Highways are one of the key partners that are part of the governance of this project as well. And they will obviously be very cited, particularly on the kind of key trunk road kind of impact as well, the A50 and the A38 and all of that, because clearly this has to be something that works from a traffic perspective. And as Chris alludes to, there's other big proposals around the Freeport, etc. One of the Freeport sites is at the A38 end of the A50 as well. So there's a much bigger kind of ecosystem here, but clearly traffic flows will be a key consideration associated with this particular piece of infrastructure.
Yeah, on the housing side, Chair, I just hope that we are going to continue liaison with our neighbours across in South Derbyshire with regard to social housing. We have arrangements at the moment whereby if South Derbyshire cannot allocate their social housing, rather than take it out of a project, that allocation comes to the city, and we do make councillors in South Derbyshire aware if we are using social housing in their area for Derby City residents. It's something that I'd like to see continue in the future with regard to cross-border cooperation.
Only to sort of build on that point really, which is that there is a significant dependency for Derby in achieving its housing numbers generally, a significant dependency on South Derbyshire generating some of those numbers. So I think it's something like 3,000 of our housing numbers need to basically be delivered within South Derbyshire. So, and South Derbyshire District Council are clearly a key partner in this, and are actively part of all the governance associated with the project. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think that concludes this item. We have recommendations 2.1 through 2.4. Can they be agreed? Agreed. Item 15, then again, it's yours, David. I think procurement of a strategic development partner.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So this relates to I guess a number of agendas, and hopefully is part of the solution. The starting point, of course, is we want to ensure we maintain and hopefully even build on the regeneration momentum in the city centre. However, of course, we know there is a challenge in terms of the council's own current and likely future capacity to support that in its own right. And this report is recommending the initiation of a procurement process to secure a private sector development partner to work alongside the City Council to actually bring capacity, expertise, innovation, and of course, just as important, financial resources to help us with that agenda around maintaining that regeneration momentum. This is not new in the sense of looking at the national picture around regeneration. Lots of other cities and major towns have developed these long-term partnerships. So, for example, Stockport have done that with Capital and Centric. Stoke have done it with an organisation called Generate. Sheffield more recently with Queensbury. So it's a relatively common model. Of course, the arrangements, the details around each of those partnerships it can be quite different. What obviously we're trying to do here as well is leverage the full value, the regeneration potential of sites which we currently own, because of course we have control of those, but it also means we can help enable overcoming the viability challenges, which is the same across the country, anywhere outside of London. Commercial viability around development is a challenge. We also want with this partner to explore alternative investment models, and linked to that is the need to find a partner who has a healthy appetite for sharing risk and reward with the City Council. And that will be part of the process, is to identify which partners we believe, or partner we believe, provides us with, if you like, that rounded set of characteristics and meets that criteria. The report is advocating that we use the Pagabo framework, because that's the only national framework which through which we can access development partners. And it's a well-established national framework. And also within the report, we have indicated, I'll use the word indicated because this will be, again, part of the process, is some of the key development opportunities, regeneration opportunities, which we believe we'd like to explore with the selected partner, which are the cultural heart sites, the Northern Gateway area of the city centre, which includes the QLC site, and the Bowl Lane site as well, opposite the Bowl Lane car park. So there's a number of sites there. I genuinely believe that this is an opportunity to attract a partner that can genuinely bring those ideas, innovation and track record and financial resources, which we need if we are to maintain that regeneration momentum in the city centre. And just quickly, we've done some informal market testing, soft market testing as you do in these circumstances before you trigger anything formally. And I would say that without any exception, all the partners we've spoken to, and these are all significant players, they're all really excited about the potential in Derby. I think one of the challenges we sometimes have is that we undersell ourselves, and the economic potential of Derby is recognised externally. Clearly that hasn't completely translated to the city centre, but I think a lot of the partners we've talked to just see that potential, and I think one thing they'll bring to us is not just the capacity, maybe they'll bring a bit more confidence as well, which I think is much needed. So yeah, that's the report. The recommendations are quite straightforward. It's to seek approval for initiating that procurement process, and ultimately, of course, to appoint a preferred partner once we've gone through that procurement process. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You referred there to us underselling ourselves a little bit historically over the years, and that may be the case, but I think it's fair to say that people are starting to sit up and notice and ask themselves why there are two major urban developments between the railway station and the city, and why Derby are looking to invest in their properties, and why the university are creating a new university campus. Why, and so many of these things are why is a major investor building apartments on the old Duckwood Square Park alongside a new entertainment venue. So I absolutely think, and in my experience and my recent dealership with partners in the city, not least through Marketing Derby, there's a smell in the air that people are interested in the city and what's happening, and it's showing out in terms of those people are looking to come and invest in the city. And if by doing this process, then we can find a big ticket development partner that can help us along the way, then in my view it should be something that we should do and encourage to be able to give us the resources and the skills and the ability to drive the city centre forward as we hope it and plan for it to be done. Can I just raise one issue, David, really, because somebody had mentioned to me that a little bit of concern about what it means for the sites that we've identified here. So maybe I'll give you an example of Bold Lane. If somebody, a trusted partner, valued partner, is already expressing interest in the site, and we know that Down to Earth are looking and I think put a planning application in, but there's others involved in showing interest in the buildings. Would this proposal be any bar to those current inquiries and stop any development?
Absolutely not. I mean the whole. I suppose it's quite difficult sometimes to describe this, but what I think we're seeking here is a partner that's going to work with us. They're not going to impose proposals on us. So any proposals that we do develop with this partner, when selected, will clearly have to come back to Cabinet anyway for formal approval, because the nature of our engagement with that partner on each specific opportunity will clearly need to seek separate approval. But if you take something like the Bowl Lane site, I think even in the report we've acknowledged the fact that there's a potential sort of temporary use of that site, and the timeframes for delivering these sites, of course, will also be part of the conversation. So if there is an opportunity to have that site used for another purpose, But I think we've never sort of ducked from the fact that long term, of course, a site of that nature may well need to come forward for a permanent development. You know, I mean, it would be an ideal site for something like, you know, a flexible workspace, because it's next to our own Connect Derby facilities. But I think all of these things are up for grab and discussion with the partner once they're on board. Once they are on board, they very much become a partner, and they will be working with us and aligning with, if you like, our agenda. What I would argue, though, is they also need to challenge us, because one of the things I would argue is that we do need challenge, we need pace, we need innovation, and they're all the things that I genuinely believe that a partner of this nature will bring to the city.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Councillor Shank, are you happy to work with us on this positive idea and development for the city?
Would you like me to answer that? Would you like me to answer that? Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive move. There is risks involved in this and going with a particular framework and a particular developer. But, you know, my assumption is research has been done into that, and if we're seeing, as David Fletcher says, lots of interest from major developers, then that's got to be a good sign, and hopefully some of our local partners who have trusted and worked with us in the city in the past can play a part in that overall framework.
Thank you for that positive contribution. In that case, then, we've got recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Can they be agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 16 then, David, is another example of positive interest and positive movement in the city in terms of development.
Yep, absolutely. This report relates to clearly a part of the city centre which I think has long needed regeneration, which is around the station. And a little bit of for background, just quickly, a little bit of a convergence really of particularly two agendas. One is the station acquiring, if you like, or achieving HS2 East status, because it is now one of the stations through which HS2 trains will pass. That in its own right means we are effectively receiving attention and support from the Department for Transport and even other government departments, to be honest, because part of the regeneration master plan work that we've done around the station will actually be funded through the HS2 growth strategy. Now, alongside that, we had, even before that kicked off, we were developing a dialogue with an organisation called London and Continental Railways, who are a wholly owned subsidiary of DFT. They're a development stroke regeneration arm of DFT. And they work with local authorities in partnership across the whole country in relation to the regeneration of places specifically around stations and the rail network. So they're obviously a great partner to have on board for an opportunity of this nature. Now, what happened during last year was we learned that DLUC, who own Midland House, that property was becoming surplus to their requirements. Some of you may know Midland House is really very much part of Derby's rail history. It was built in about 1872, and it was the offices of the Midland Railway. And clearly, it's a rail heritage asset we would want to not only retain, but also very much integrate into any wider master plan for that part of the city. So we basically put the representatives of DLUC, which is another organisation called Located, in touch with LCR, with London Continental Railways, and the principle of the deal, which is captured within this report, is what emerged from that. What the LCR board signed off was an investment which is around about I don't think we're declaring in this meeting, in this part of the meeting, what the numbers are, but they basically came to a decision on what investment level they were willing to put on the table, and that did create a gap, and this is where this report is seeking approval for us to provide a loan a capital loan. I do emphasise loan, and I'll come back to that in a second, of £500,000 to LCR using our ring-fenced right to buy capital receipts, which can be used for regeneration purposes. And the critical part around that loan is it will be the repayment back to the City Council will be triggered by one of two things: either disposal by LCR of Midland House, which they ultimately will do clearly when they want to enable the regeneration of the wider area, or the 31st of March 2028. So when one of those two things happen, that is when the loan becomes repayable to the City Council. We are looking and have sought advice on subsidy control, but this is deemed to be low risk because it's public sector to public sector. And we are currently developing a draft funding agreement between the two organisations to facilitate the loan. And the target is for the exchange on the acquisition to happen late this month or early next month. And this already has the approval of the LCR board. And the final piece is, in terms of security around the Derby City Council loan, is linked to a restriction on title. So basically, that means that LCR cannot dispose of Midland House without our consent. And there is, in addition to that, an overage element to the agreement, which basically means that we will benefit from any net increase in the capital value of that asset when it is disposed of. So it's a relatively straightforward arrangement in the sense of it is public sector to public sector, and I would say it's in the context of a much bigger opportunity. I'm not going to hide the fact that this is one of the options that we put forward to Great British Railways as a possible headquarters location, but of course we're yet to hear the outcome of that particular process. But even without that, this is an absolutely crucial part of the wider jigsaw of that part of the city centre. So, as I say, the recommendations are is primarily to enable us to progress with that payment of a loan to LCR. Although, as it does set out in the report, it's a deferred payment, so we wouldn't actually be paying that out until 2024-25. That was part of the agreement with LCR and with DLUC. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Another example of how we are able to support, hopefully, regeneration development in the city, and it could yet tie in with improvements through HS2 around the stations, and also, as you say, come Easter, we might know where we are with Great British Rail, which could also tie in quite nicely. So, any questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe David can answer this. Just something that bothers me slightly is, if LCR are wholly owned by the Department for Transport, and we're lending on public money to help with the acquisition of Midland House, is that not? Is this just not public money going around in circles? Local authority lending ultimately the government money to purchase an asset in the city, which is going to be put back to, hopefully, to public use. I just don't see it just doesn't seem very logical to me, as in, why are we having to do this if they're wholly owned by the DFT? Why is there not other ways of funding this?
I think, David, you touched on that. You could make it a little bit more clear.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do understand that the reason why that question would arise. That the reality is that whilst LCR are part of DFT, clearly their own business and their finances, if you like, are ring-fenced. So they have a finite level of investment. They have an investment pot that clearly is funded by DFT, but that is finite in scale. And what LCR have here is not just the capital costs of acquiring the building, but also the holding costs as well. And what they were suggesting was they could fund a significant proportion of the capital costs and all of the holding costs. But beyond that was where they were starting to reach a bit of a limit to how much their board was willing to sign off. And ultimately, LCR is there for a particular purpose. It's not a developer. what they effectively will do through master planning, land assembly, site assembly, and everything else is effectively create a more investment ready opportunity. So ultimately we will need a development partner to be attracted into this to actually develop out whatever scheme, not just for Midland House, but maybe for other parts of that area of the city. So the reality is the reason that this need for this contribution arose is because the LCR board themselves said we're willing to invest up to this level, and that fell £500,000 short of what we needed to raise for the acquisition. It was all against, as I think the report points out, a red book valuation to make sure it was all legitimate. But those monies will come back to us. It is a loan. It's not. We're not making an equity investment, if you like, in the property. We're just facilitating the acquisition. And I would say, again, it's touched on in the report, is the risk of not acquiring it is actually the more significant worry, because if it fell into the hands of another party that maybe didn't have the same level of aspiration and was willing to invest the levels that are required to bring this back into the kind of condition you'd want it to be in, you effectively just see a ticking over of what we're currently seeing, which is underinvestment, and we all know what that part of the city currently, what the experience is. It doesn't feel like the gateway to a city, particularly a city which is the home of Rolls-Royce and Alstom and, the biggest rail cluster in the country and all those things. There's none of that when you arrive. So I get the question, it's a valid one, but the reality is on this occasion, there was a limit to how much the LCR board were willing to sign up to, and that's why we've had to plug this gap just to make it happen.
And I think in summary, David, the risks are minimal whilst the potential advantages and gain is significant in terms of even benefiting from an increased value on the asset.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add, I think that there's always the other way of looking at it. If we were loaning this to a private sector developer, I'd probably be getting the question, are we really certain that we want to loan money to a private sector investor? I think actually we're loaning it effectively to another public sector partner. So I would say that's another way of kind of, in a sense, looking at it. It's a low risk transaction, this, but it does maintain control within the public sector of what is a really prominent part of that area.
Okay, thank you. In the absence of any more questions, we've got recommendations 2.1, 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed. Moving on to item 17. I'm a little conscious of time. We're going for a new record in cabinet meeting length, I think, but we've got one or two more items to get through, but the next one is the MTFP. And Simon, I think you're going to introduce.
Thank you for that, and I know Councillor Smale has had a family bereavement, so obviously I'll take any technical questions and the Cabinet members will take areas specific to the areas that they are responsible for. So in December, we issued a budget report. That budget report was obviously against the context of major change in the macroeconomic conditions facing the public sector, indeed facing the world in terms of energy costs, in terms of inflationary pressures, in terms of demand, cost of living. So the budget set out a number of aspects. Firstly, to try and focus on what we can do with the resources that we got. So that was a 90% challenge. And it was also to focus on trying to propose a budget that was balanced with no use of reserves, so effectively to address that challenge in the proposals being brought forward. So on the 21st of December, Cabinet met and considered the budget report to issue for consultation. I think members will remember on that date I said that the day before the government announced their local government finance assessment that gave 624,000 more funding than we had forecast, and that we'd be bringing back proposals after the consultation of how that could be deployed. Just going forward to early February, you've got the final local government finance assessment that gave 92,000 more on top of that 624. And also in that time period, we looked at as we have to, take a position statement on our collection fund of business rates and council tax, and it was felt that £250,000 of the surplus being identified could be used on a one-off basis going forward. So this report is very much building on that December report and listening to the consultation. And you'll notice in the report it does talk about that Cabinet should consider the outcomes of a budget consultation detailed in Appendix 9, including notes from Voices in Action and Children in Care, and we do thank them for their involvement in that, and also notes from the meetings including representatives from business ratepayers that we had with Marketing Derby, where 40 business owners and people from the city came and joined us in a discussion. So that was really positive about engagement, picks up some of what we talked about, more engagement in the city. There was also 2 nights of the Executive Scrutiny Board on the 16th and 17th of January, and that's detailed in Appendix 12. And the consultation had 524 responses, and on page 73 of the report, it has a word cloud of the type of responses we get, and then some of the quotes and some of the analysis. And it was important that in looking if and how we deployed the extra resources we got, that we also looked at the priorities of the cities as well as any other budget adjustments that we would do by refreshing the budget. And in there, and it's in paragraph 4.3.3 of the report, and 4.3.4 talks about in a bit more detail what has changed. It talks about where the Cabinet has recommended in here some investment, so a change in pressures, which generally is about growth and investment, as well as a review of some of the areas that we were getting feedback on, where you can see there has been either reversal or partial reversal of some of the budget proposals that went out for consultation. So it is directly aligned to listening and responding to the consultation. As I say, the additional funding we got, the 624, the 92 and the one-off 250, isn't a huge amount of additional funding when the council's net budget is just over 280 million. So it was important that was targeted in the right areas and listening to the outcome of the consultation. I think I also just want to bring to your attention that in December, we provided some analysis of where the net investment was made, and there's growth in both children's and adult social care, where our demand pressures are, so protecting the vulnerable and improving life outcomes for those groups. So again, those tables are in December are really relevant to the budget report that we have here. The report also requires at this stage, because it's the report that will flow through to Council on the 27th of February, for me to provide to the Cabinet and to Council a Section 25 statement of reserves and adequacy report that's attached at Appendix 7 and is summarised in paragraph 11.2. And I just ask members of the Cabinet to read that and make sure before they vote on the recommendations that they take into account the summary that I put there. But in summary, it says that I feel that the Council can set the budget for next year, and I have assessed the reserves and adequacy that is required under Section 25 of the Act. Just for completeness, it does say in there that we need to take into account the projected overspending. It says there 23-24, that should say 22-23. So my apologies for that typographical error. That will be changed on the report that is issued alongside the recommendation coming to Cabinet. The report also details updates to the capital programme, primarily to reflect the inclusion of the HRA that was decided in January, which is again in investment in our housing stock, in investment in net zero, and combining the council's programme, including any slippage that we refreshed. Next year, there's a capital programme proposed of 226 million, a further 122 million the following year, and a further 19 million the following year. And members will recall that we have looked at trying to start developing 5-year programmes of investment in key outcomes for a city, whether that be highways, whether it be property, whether it be a new budget for leisure and parks in respect of investment. The report talks about the Dedicated Schools Grant, which is an important part of the investment that we make, both ourselves and with academies in the city, and that's detailed in paragraph 6. You can see there that the national problems every council is facing in respect of increasing high needs placements and the cost of high needs placements is going to lead to an increase in the deficit that we have. And we've been working over the past 2 years with our partner in Power to try to start turning that curve. But the demand is there and increasing right across the country. And finally, Chair, if I can just highlight that Appendix 18 talks about some proposed changes to the council plan. So the council plan was approved by full council in February, and we've had a look at it, and we are suggesting some minor amendments to the deliverables or the outcomes that we are planning in the council plan. So there's a series of recommendations, but please take into account before you vote on it that you have considered the consultation and my Section 25 statement, that the recommendations are detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. In Councillor Smale's absence, and we wish himself and his family well in their loss, but we can deal with this matter by repeating our initial comments in relation to the holding of this budget and the difficulties that it's presented. Nobody, no cabinet, no council member should want to have to present a report and an MTFP of this nature with the levels of savings that's needed and the impact on council services which are inevitable as a result of it. Forefront in the discussions for months and whilst we've been working through council papers and things have been the reserves and the reserves of the council, and Simon mentions his section 225 reserve statement, which he's noted with concern, but with the caveat that we, as a council administration for the last 3 years, have been gradually building back into usable reserves, with the exception of our ability to do so this year. But the MTFP carries the intentions and the plans in relation to reserves along the way. So yes, Simon, that's duly noted. The other important part of this report is our response to the consultation, and a couple of thank yous first really to all the teams that have engaged people in the consultation, and particularly Heather's team. And one noticeable consultation has been around the equal opportunities impact assessment, and amongst the changes that we've recommended in this report are some focused around that and some of the issues that were brought up by them, and we've attempted to address some of those concerns on some of those services and minimise the harm on those services. So thank you for that work, Heather, and it's always been the council's, the administration's intention to look closely at the consultation results and respond appropriately. And amongst those changes and those cuts in services that were proposed and won't be followed through are numerous. And I've got one hand from the cabinet member already, and I'm going to invite cabinet members to address those where we've looked at the consultation in their portfolios and been able to reduce or minimise the effect of the savings that were proposed, because it's not insignificant, and it's something we've worked extremely hard on. So, and just finally, from me, just to emphasise what Simon's already talked about in terms of the investment that the council's made, the extra funding that's gone into children's and adult services for this year. Yes, there are some proposed savings in terms of some of the services, but we should not lose sight of the fact that the major investment that's already had to go into the budget to respond to the extra pressures and extra demand that both services are experiencing. So, yes, I think we'll come to the Cabinet members, and Councillor Williams, you indicated first.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Simon and his team, but I'd also like to give my thanks to Voices in Action. To those of you that haven't been to a Voices in Action meeting, I suggest you try and go along to one because they are so insightful. I went along again this year to the budget consultation meeting. Really, really good in-depth discussions by the young people about all of the proposals in front of them. And again, they raised some issues to me that I probably hadn't really thought they would raise. And they were very clear and concise about what was important to them, and that did make me take some of that information back and have those discussions with my colleagues in Cabinet. Obviously, this is not a position that I would like to be in. I would like more funding from the national government, particularly for children's social care, and I will say that again, it is needed, and we continue to campaign. Myself and Roy, in terms of social care funding, are absolutely actively campaigning. Mr. Smith, Andy Smith, my strategic director, is doing a fabulous job trying to get that over to the government as well in his role. So we will continue to lobby for better funding for social care. It is required, but where we are now, we've had to make some of these decisions which have been really hard to make in some cases, but I'm really grateful for some of the support around the changes that we've been able to put into the children's budget. So again, thank you to those that took part in the consultation, but my particular thanks to Voices in Action, the young people there, with using their effective voice to make change in the city. So thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Did you want to just mention, for people's benefits, the reversal of some savings in terms of foster care allowances and the exiting care team and the advantages of that in response to the consultation?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, just to highlight, so our foster carers, our own in-house foster carers are amazing, and we have worked really, really hard over the last 5 years to turn around the number of foster carers that we have in the city that are our own foster carers and that aren't here with us through independent foster care agencies. And we've now managed to do that. Our foster carers are their payments and allowances are the best in the region, and we're particularly proud of that. What we initially went out to consult on was a freeze, basically on their uplift. Obviously, we were able to now look at that and to continue with the uplift. What we are also doing is working with our other partners in the region to help them understand our journey and how we got to where we are in terms of the effectiveness of keeping our own foster carers and not having to go out to use the agencies as much as we did in the past. So again, it's about working regionally with all of our different authorities and making sure that we're sharing that good practice. In terms of the exiting care team, yeah, the addition there back into the budget will really help in terms of being able to keep that team going. And again, it's a win for the service and for young people's outcomes, because where it is safe to do so, it is more beneficial for young people to be at home. And so when we can work with that team to get young people out of care as soon as it's safe for them to do so. Again, really pleased that we've been able to look at that. And again, thank you to people that raised it during the consultation. It was able to give me more of a voice to be able to say this is what we need to reverse. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so amongst other things that I mentioned, Councillor Eyre, are a variety of things. I think we may have touched on how we've managed to give provision for our non-statutory libraries, but we also looked at the Christmas offer, the capacity in locality working, coronation events that are up and coming this year, and a variety of other things within your portfolio. I think museums is in your portfolio as well. No, it's somebody else. Jonathan's customers. I'll cover off the museums then, because we had a lot of representation in respect of that, and we've been able to change the proposal there in terms of spreading the cost and effectively confirming the funding, the remaining funding for them for the next 3 years by reducing the grant that we give to the museums every year by £20,000 a year for 3 years, rather than a one-off a sum of £60,000. So that way they know what they're going to get for the next 3 years in terms of subsidy, and it'll give them opportunity to make provision accordingly. So we think that's a good benefit, Matthew. So the things under your portfolio briefly, because what I want to do, what we are going to do is through our communications teams to work through the results of this consultation with the media, with our local media, and issue statements, and by all means invite you in to talk through what the consultation results were and our response to it. So just briefly, Matthew, if you can say what's highlighted in this report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, we've covered CMLs and libraries in a lot of detail, so I don't think there's any need for me to allude much more to those. You mentioned Christmas, and I know that Rachel is absolutely delighted we're going to have a Christmas budget going forwards to look at how we deliver a fantastic Christmas offer and how important that is for our city centre, for our residents and for the businesses that are located there. I'm delighted to see that's included. And we mentioned neighbourhood working. Obviously, we're transitioning over now to the new localities model, and it's about ensuring that is fully resourced so that all councils have got access to not only their neighbourhood board funding, but also neighbourhood officers, public protection officers, LACs, and there's a whole system that's been developed around that one. And I'll have more to say on that, as I say, in the comms pieces that will go out, and in the budget as well. And obviously, the Christmas element is covered by Jonathan as well, and no doubt he'll have some things to say on those as well.
So officers involved in the localities works have been consulted and agreed the best way of further support for the new localities system, and as you say, the Christmas officer, we're going to keep the lights on. We're not cancelling Christmas, which is the plan. Okay. All right. Jerry, in your portfolio, there were some concerns raised, and we've reacted to those too.
Yeah, we have, Chair, yes. A few of them are in the consultation about the street cleaning. So there was a recommendation to drop 2 of the street cleaners. We've put 1 back in, so that's not as drastic as it was. Also weed killing as well. I couldn't see the point really of getting rid of one of our weed killer operatives, because we'd have a quad bike stuck at Stores Road doing nothing, so we've put that back in as well. We will be reducing winter garden waste collections over winter, so obviously that's the less of the 2 evils really. So there will be monthly collections from December through to the end of March, so people are going to be missing out on 8 collections over the winter. But to compensate on that and to counteract that, there was going to be an admin charge of additional blue and brown bins, whether they were replacements or additional ones. We've put that back into the budgets. So if people have only got 1 brown bin or 1 blue bin, to encourage recycling, they can get a free blue and brown bin as it was before.
Thank you for that summary. Councillor Webb, I think understandably there were some concerns raised about the savings in relation to adult care, but we've looked at one particular aspect of that and built something back into the budget.
Yes, we have, Chair, and it's mitigation for some of the savings that we've made with regard to our budget on care costs. And although we are looking to recover debt across adult social care, as we know, It's a big issue for us, but when it comes to care packages, then we've taken a large amount out of that over the next 2 years. But to mitigate, there was a proposal to scale back the respite care at Bonsall View and bring it down from 5 to 3 units available. There are 7 units at Bonsall View, and we are opening that up to the maximum. So it will offer respite care for those clients that need it, and it will give respite from those residents that are providing 24-hour, 365 days a year services to those people that require it. So it's a small change, but hopefully it will be able to offer the respite that some families need.
Okay, thank you. Heather, in your considerations with the Equal Opportunities Impact Assessment, one of the things they raised concern about was the car being charged for disabled parking facilities and things. I think it's also been agreed that that would no longer be applied. What are the other things that we've addressed some of the other things that we've addressed in the course of these changes to the budget?
I was going to say, I think certainly street lighting was one of the areas that was picked up. I was going to say I may need to come back to you on the other ones. Apologies.
Okay, well, I mean, when we talked about it, we talked about the fact that they were concerned about the cleaning, the bins and things like that. There are a number of other things that would have potential impact on less able people or whatever. They were keen to keep a Christmas offer. They were keen on the locality working and things like that. So just to say, we have given full consideration to all those that kindly took part in the consultation, and we'll take it from there. Is there any other comments or questions? Yes, Ruth.
Right, it's certainly very welcome that we've had this a bit more money from the government than we were expecting when we actually got the financial settlement. And it's good to see that the areas that are receiving money are receiving them. But I think we all know that it's a lot less than really would be required. And yet again, you know, the government is not listening. The demand, the percentage rise each year in demand for adult social care, for certain elements of children's services is a lot greater than the government are prepared to fund. And they have got to wake up to that. They've also got to wake up to the fact that we need a proper resolution for adult social care and the funding model that we are going to go on with in the future. It's just not right. I mean, Councillor Webb mentioned about, you know, recovery of debts. You know, that's often from people who have had to take out some sort of, have the council pay for their social care, while either because their house is not available to be sold at that time because probably some other relative is living there. You know, the system is quite cruel at the moment. Yeah, Councillor Webb is nodding.
I don't think you get any opposition or a different view from Councillor Webb or Cabinet around the fact that adult services and children's services need an awful lot more work, but that's the area that can be addressed in is mainly.
I mean, there are opportunities for service transformation. Certainly some time ago, probably about 10 years ago, the government used to give money for dual running. So you're running your existing service while setting up your new way of doing things. That seems to have gone by the wayside somewhat. You know, it doesn't make service transformation easier, and we can end up being stuck in a path of higher costs than we really need to be. So I think the government is being very short-sighted.
Councillor Webb and Councillor Williams have indicated, as you have, Councillor Shanky, would you like the last word on this one as well? Or do you want to go now? We'll have Councillor Webb and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Skelton, yes, we have been transforming services, and we have worked closely with our partners. You're aware of the integrated care system that we have now, and we have one of our assistant directors who is actually working within the NHS to improve services. We've got local area coordinators which are transferring from people services to communities and place, whereby they are working in hospital now, all well, 85% of them now externally funded and supported in transforming social care. So those local area coordinators are there to build up resilience in communities and are there to support the health service and support adult social care in trying to prevent people needing to come in to our care services at such an early stage. So the prevention agenda is being worked on really carefully and closely, and it's not necessarily the council that does that. It is working with the community and voluntary sector, with all our health sectors, to transform services. So that work is ongoing.
Okay, Yvonne, and I'm going to try and pick up the pace a little bit because people... Sorry, did you want to come in at this point? Okay, Councillor Williams.
I shall be quick. I don't disagree with Councillor Skelton in terms of the funding, but what I do disagree on is in terms of the transformational work that our teams have been doing. What we've had to do, because of the lack of funding, is to actually be imaginative, to think outside the box, to work better and differently with our partners. And we've got a number of different projects and services that I could easily highlight today. One of the major factors that this change that this administration have done is to be less paternalistic about what the council can be providing itself, and actually working with our providers, with our community and voluntary sector, with the fire service, with the NHS, with the police, all our different partners out there, to find out who can deliver services the best, and then be enablers there in children's services. And I'll make, it's my last point, sorry for going on, but in children's services, a really clear example was when we formed the Keeping Families Together team. Again, we use the skills of our youth workers, of our family support workers, of our social workers, put that team together to keep children with their families where it's safe to do so. That team has been transformational in not only getting better outcomes for children and young people and their families, but in saving the council millions and millions of pounds. And I could go on, we've got the Better Together Cafe downstairs, which is amazing. Tuesdays and Thursdays, get down there for some lunch, see our young adult learners working down there. It's just brilliant. There's been some amazing transformation going on in the city. You know, work with, I'm going to be quiet because I'll just get too excited about it. There's loads and loads going on, and we should be really proud of that work. So I do agree with the budget conversation there. The government does need to act, absolutely. I mean, as I said earlier, we'll continue to keep lobbying for that, but don't let it think that it's stifling transformation and innovation, because it really isn't.
Okay, thank you for that. I got a little bit too much gravy on my sausage and mash yesterday, but I'm not complaining. It was really good, and it is a great event down there. Heather.
Apologies, it was just to come back on your question about the areas that had been flagged up as part of the quality impact assessment. So as we mentioned, it was street lighting, street cleansing, the charging for the blue badge bays, and the Exiting Care team. So, and it was just to say thank you very much to all of our employee network volunteers and also our Equality Hub members who contributed to that as well. Thank you.
So it's fair to say that we've tried to address virtually everything that they raised in the course of the consultation. Okay. Right. Unless there's anybody else. Oh, okay, Councillor Shank.
Councillor Graves, want to go first? Oh, who's gone? Oh. Okay, I'll go next then. Apart from Councillor Williams, I think, who recognises the reality of the situation and is prepared to call out the government, one thing this report doesn't do, and one thing you haven't mentioned today, Chair, is A, call it a remarkable budget, or B, actually level up with people. This isn't a consequence of the war in Ukraine or temporary inflation. This is the consequence of 12, 13 years of austerity. Derby's lost a huge amount of money. You know that's the case. Other Conservative, you can look at me like that if you want and tell me when you want me to stop, I'll stop. But other Conservative leaders across councils, across the country, have really lobbied government, and that's not just in secret meetings or letters, they've actually called them out publicly. And we, year after year now, 5th year of you setting a budget, have failed to do that.
Okay, could I stop you for a moment and just tell you that I get your point, but we're here now considering the Cabinet report in relation to the MTFP. It's not the time or the place for us. What recommendations, what sort of could we include in this report that's going to have any effect on the budget, on the government's budgeting over the last 3 years? So, if you wouldn't mind confining your contribution to this report and the contents, then I'd be very much obliged. You'll have plenty of opportunity to make your pitch for joining those members in London sooner rather than later. So, if you couldn't mind just focusing on this report, I'd be.
I'm glad you're hoping it sooner rather than later as well. But again, Chris, I think this is
the opportunity sooner rather than later.
Thanks for clarifying yourself.
I didn't comment on the outcome.
But again, you just don't get it, do you? The situation we're in is because of Tory austerity over so long. If I don't mention it today...
Does the report refer to Tory austerity?
If I don't...
I'm sorry,
if I don't mention it, Chris, it doesn't mean it's not happening or it's going to go away. If you don't like me mentioning it here...
We get questions every council meeting about what representations we meet, and that's a separate process to this. This is about Derby City Council's medium-term financial plan and what it includes. It's nothing to do with government at this point in time.
Wow. See,
we make those representations elsewhere. All you're doing is taking the opportunity to make political statements. So I'm going to stop you there and ask if there's any other contribution.
I've got lots of contributions, but you're going to have to listen to them, Chris. Every time I speak,
you can't just say
you can't make that contribution.
I asked you to focus on the report, and
I am focusing on the report.
I'm
talking about the budget report. If you're not prepared to listen to it, that's fine.
So, any other contributions, members? And we've got recommendations. I forgot to take a note of that. Help me out. 1.2 to 1.7. 2.1 to 2.7. Can they be agreed? Okay. Moving in then. Item 18, Treasury Management Investment Strategy. Simon.
Thank you. This is a very important report, but you'll also be glad it's a report that is consistent with what we have approved for a number of years, which is our approach to managing borrowing and investments. In that, we always have to strike a balance between security, return and liquidity. and the report details effectively how we spread risk, how we make investments, our total level of borrowing, and everything else. Maybe to give Cabinet some assurance, we do produce, as you're aware, a half-year, mid-year Treasury management report, which goes to the Audit Committee, goes to Cabinet, and goes to Council. And I know that when I took that through, I think November onwards, it was well received, and the Audit Committee said that they could get a high level of assurance about our approach. So fundamentally, it's not to say there's any change here, but it's important that as this goes forward to full council, all members, not just for Cabinet, understand how we balance that risk, liquidity, return and security. And this report details how the council operates. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Exec scrutiny looked at this last night and with the other, as along with the other items, resolved to note the report. Any other comments, questions? No? Okay, in that case we have recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Can they be agreed? Okay. Moving on then. We'll get to the Q3 financial monitoring against Simon again, yeah?
Thank you. So this is a regular reporting on the financial position of the council. Again, we need to put it in the context of the economic pressures still being experienced in the economy. Latest CPI figure was 10.1%. Energy costs significantly above where they were a year ago. Pay awards being sort of awarded at higher than we'd originally thought back in February. So the fact that we've been able to show, even against that difficult economic backdrop, a reduction in the forecast overspend by 1.5 million, so it's down at 11.308 million, which is still an overspend, but we've been reporting that consistently. That in Q1, it reduced Q2 on Q1 and Q3 on Q2. So a positive direction of travel. But I think the report also details, and the reason we include graphs in there, is to show how some of the demand management initiatives, cost avoidance initiatives are in there. So you can see, for example, where places are, agencies, social work agency, we're down to 4 social work agency staff, and everything else. So all of that is very positive about how we have mitigated potential cost increases and demand increases, and the report details that. We will hope that will come down further by the end of Q4 from the interventions that we have, and I've often said in here, we have a series of preventative work, we have a spending review panel process, we have tight financial management, and unless there's something atypical coming up in the remaining 6 weeks of the year, I'd expect that to come down by the end of the financial year, but we do not expect it to turn into a surplus, but hopefully we'll continue a direction of travel that we've seen so far. The report also details, even in this very complex year of financial pressures, that we've been able to deliver savings of over 10 million against our target that we set last year. Again, that is a positive achievement. We plan to spend 148 million of a capital budget again on capital schemes against a budget of 195 million. And we've been working hard to minimise the DSG overspend as a result of high needs and special educational needs. The report also details the collection of both council tax and business rates, which is 79% at the end of December. So obviously that's ahead of what an equal straight line, which would have been 75%. And the report also details of 301,000 of write-off for business rates and 43,000 write-off of housing benefit overpayments. The details of those are in the private agenda. So overall, I think this is a continuation of robust financial management against a very difficult financial context nationally, and it's pleasing to see these overspend coming down as a result of what we have all done, members and officers in trying to control our spend this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. A very detailed, important report for us to be able to keep a check and balance on our intention and desire and performance in terms of creating a good budget for. In fact, it's a remarkable budget for the council, I think, on many occasions. But no, we do appreciate the work of the team, Alison, and those that put the effort into keeping us up to speed and monitoring the budget process in this way. Any comments, any questions in relation to this remarkable budget? Catch up, yes, Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Chair. And it just proves the difficult situation we're in. If you continue to think it's remarkable to have an overspend of 11.3 million, given the position this council's in. Just a question for Simon, really, around the reserves again, and the second question around the capital spend. So around the reserves, we talk about a general reserve current balance remaining at 8.9 million. Is that figure what you're saying there today, or is that the figure given the level of overspend you think we'll have at the end of March? And then my second question around the capital budget. I note it's woefully short of what we set out to invest in the city at the beginning of the year, and a significant amount of that is not improving the highways as much as we said we would. How confident are we of spending 148 million, as it says in the report, given that there's only 6 weeks of this financial year left?
There you go, he can ask sensible questions, can't he? Relevant to the papers, that's good. I like that. Yes.
Thank you. So, first of all, Councillor Shanker has mentioned the general fund balance. That 8.9 million is what I recommended back in February that you retain in the general fund balance, so that is not being drawn on. We are quite clear that this year we have had to draw on what is called the budget risk reserve to meet the in-year overspend that we are trying to reduce. That has taken that down more than we would have liked back in February, and we are trying to minimise the drawdown in this financial year. But in respect of the question asked, the general fund balance is being maintained at the level that was recommended back in February 2022. In terms of a capital programme, it's always a difficult balance of when is the optimum time to spend money and still get value for money. So Councillor Shanker has talked about transforming cities as the major highways and connectivity scheme that we have. Costs of highways infrastructure, connectivity, rapid transport has gone up significantly. And working with our partners, Nottingham City, in the Transforming Cities programme and with the DFT, there has been a need to reprofile that programme to try and get the best outcomes with the money that we get and demonstrate value for money. In Q1 and Q2, we highlighted that a significant proportion of what is a £40 million programme that was included has had to slip into future years in order that we deliver against those objectives of securing the best outcome and value for money. Outside of that, there's been some small slippage on other schemes, but significantly less than we have had in previous years. And every quarter we do a review of the plans to spend, and all the capital schemes generally on the programme now has gone through the project management office and the PMO board over the past 2 to 3 years, which one of our assessments is not only the ability to start procurement, but also the profile of when it's being spent. So in summary, I think we have a higher confidence of being able to deliver spend towards that target, but there could be certain events which happen, which may stop work on a site or prohibit some further stage to happen, and we will report that as normal, in this case in the outturn report in June or July. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? No? In that case, we've got 2.1 and 2.2. Agreed. Can they be agreed? Agreed. 21 then is, I think, Heather and our Q3 performance monitoring. We've got 20. We're going to do that first. Compliance with contract and financial procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. So there was the report that came out and then an addendum in respect of being able to be part of the place pilot. So first of all, the main report talks about a bid for 475,000 from the Safer Roads Fund to focus on minimising and mitigating against collisions. I'd hope that all members would welcome that as a very positive bid for the grant, which has been indicatively allocated to Derby. So, and the report details some of the outcomes that we're going to achieve for that. The addendum that came out yesterday is in respect of we're being invited to be one of 5 place pilots. So this builds on the work that we've done with one public estate, and the idea is to really develop in a locality different areas of partners and public sector bodies working together in order to get the best use, the best utilisation and the best synergy in the assets that we have. So that again is taking a strategic asset management approach. It's very consistent with our council plan and our partnership approach, and it's a bid for £500,000. I know, Chair, that the question was asked at executive scrutiny, and obviously the Chair of executive scrutiny is gone, and that was to fundamentally say, would this lead to a disadvantage in ward member knowledge and engagement in assets issues in their ward? If you think about it logically, it's likely to increase the ability of members being cited on the best use of assets, whether we own them, whether other people own them in their wards. So I think it's a positive move, and members should be better cited of proposals in respect of public assets. Thank you, Chair.
Simon, we can agree to that recommendation from last night. Yeah.
It's for you to decide, but I'd recommend that members will be cited and therefore accept the recommendation.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on item 20? No. In that case, we have recommendations 2.1 through 2.4, I believe, in the report and the addendum. Can be agreed? Thank you. So, now it's Heather and the Q3 performance monitoring report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is performance report for Q3, which does sit alongside the finance report. It really kind of brings to life, hopefully, the progress that we're making in our council plan. So we have our vision of working with the city, for the city, and our 4 themes of green, growth, resilient and vibrant. And as part of the performance report, we've brought highlights of those areas. So just in terms of the summary, overall 78% of our performance measures had met or exceeded their target, which is actually a 7% rise from last quarter. 68% of measures are forecasted to achieve their annual target by the end of March. 84% of our priority milestones and actions were assessed as on track or completed, again, which is an improvement on Q2. 65% of priority projects have been evaluated at the end of December as either green or amber green, further to kind of targeted assurance reviews that have taken place. And there were 16 strategic risks within the strategic risk register, which I think just reflects the kind of the dynamic environment we're working in at the moment. And it should be noted that 1 strategic risk had been closed over the quarter, which related to the 2022 NJC pay claim. So as part of the report, Cabinet are asked to approve the key changes to the performance framework, which is set out at paragraph 4.5. So this includes 1 change in a measure description, 8 new or amended targets, and then also 9 actions measures which have been removed, and we've been clear around that. It should be noted that also a number of measure definitions have also just been redefined as we look to progress and keep the plan up to date. The key thing is really the areas of achievement, which are highlighted in paragraphs 4.9 and 4.10, and I would draw Cabinet's attention to, in particular, a continued focus on income generation, so supporting new businesses and jobs in the city. In particular, improving the quality of homes, and in particular, the number of affordable new homes available in the city, supporting our vulnerable residents to remain independent in their own homes. Supporting young people in the city into employment, educational training, alongside adult learners gaining positive outcomes. Our ongoing work with partners in the city, Community Action Derby, to respond to the cost of living crisis. We've also improved some of our processes, and in particular we have launched a councillor portal. It should also be noted that we've been undertaking ongoing work around contract management, which has enabled us to reduce our risk rating in that area. The report, of course, does flag up other areas of risk, so in particular ongoing challenges around sufficiency of accommodation, which is impacting on a number of services, for example, homelessness, adults and children's and social care, and obviously we see that on the budget side as well. In terms of colleague sickness absence, we know that rates are higher than we would want, and we have undertaken a deep dive performance review in recent months just to kind of really evaluate the reasons for that and to take action. And then finally, one of our risks in relation to accommodation for victims of domestic abuse, this risk has been reviewed and updated for male victims. So obviously we've given a lot more detail in terms of the appendices, so I think you can see quite detailed information with respect to the projects, the actions and the risks and the measures kind of at the back of the report. We're not recommending any particular performance measures or risks for a surgery at this point, but Cabinet are asked to obviously note the latest performance position as shown in the detailed information. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Heather. Again, thanks to yourself and your team for all the hard work that you put into this. At such a busy time, it's obviously vital that we don't miss anything, that we do keep an eye on things. And you've mentioned many of the things that are ongoing and need constant work, and my Cabinet members are involved in that along the way. So thank you for the report. It's duly noted. And we'd be asked to agree recommendations 1.1 to 1.5. Okay, I'm reading the wrong bit. Oh, that's the purpose. Recommendations are 2.1, 2.4. You caught me out. Good. All right, can they be agreed? 2.1 to 2.4. Thank you. Okay, item 22 then calls on me to propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion on the following items on the grounds that it involves likely disclosure of exempted information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. We've got anybody else left, have we? We can close the meeting, I believe.